The Scream franchise has ended people in a crazy way. I'm looking at you, Marine. The series is known for wiping out anyone and everyone, sometimes brutally. Today, I will be ranking every character death in the Scream franchise. Let's get into it. Welcome back, I'm Sippin Ice, and before we get into it, spoiler alert for every Scream movie. Okay, sweet, I warned you. Now, let's dive in with Scream 2. The first one to go was Phil Stevens. If you paid attention to the name, then you'll recognize the reason he was axed off. That's right, it's because he had a potty. No, not for real. He actually shared a name with the franchise's first ever kill. Steven Orth. The Scream 2 killers were trying to go down the copycat killer route. Let's get back to the potty though. That was only partially a joke. Phil Stevens met his end when he went to go empty the tank and overheard something in the next stall over. Long story short, he overhears a little too much. Specifically, he overhears what it sounds like when a knife goes through a stall wall and into your ear. Pretty crazy of a kill, but while his death was unique, it was a little too unbelievable. It was also overshadowed by his counterpart's death in the Scary Movie by Marlon Wayans. If you know, you know. Do you also know who's next? It's Maureen Evans. Maureen Evans is in the same boat as her partner, Phil. She was also a part of the copycat killer theme, as she shares her name with Maureen Prescott, Sydney's mother. Unlike Phil though, the way she met her end was just pure chaos. Damn near everyone was wearing the Ghostface mask in the audience, and when the real one sat next to Maureen, she was doomed. She was stabbed numerous times, I think 7 to be exact. She falls out screaming on the stage. Brutal end to one of the best opening scenes of the franchise. You might have noticed by now the theme I keep mentioning, the copycat theme. That's because the trend continues with CeCe Cooper. Daphne, crap, no, I mean CeCe, met her end by being stabbed in the back twice and tossed over a railing on a balcony. Good chase scene and finish, but for a few reasons, I can't really just justify it being higher than here. For one, how many flights of stairs are in that house? While I enjoyed the chase, it just seemed like the stairs were endless. And while she was the first person to be tossed from some height, she wasn't the last, nor was she the best. More on that kill later when we get to that movie.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Let's get back to that copycat theme. CeCe wasn't her real name. While she did go by that, her real name was actually Casey, thus tying her to Casey Becker from Scream 1, Randy Meeks. The death that never should have happened. Nah, I get it. It was needed to shock people, but man, do I wish I could have gotten more Randy? Yes, I do. In Scream 3, Randy does not count. You know what does count? My ranking of every Ghostface. Click here to watch that if you haven't already. Back to Randy. If we go based on exactly how he died, then it would easily go in the bottom tier, as he was just pulled into a van and stabbed to death. But the one aspect that stops us from being there is where and when it happened. First, check this out. I know, that's probably controversial, but his death just didn't do much for me. The part I did enjoy was the shocking nature of it, and how it was done in broad daylight on campus. It just really makes you realize Ghostface can strike anyone, anytime. But every other aspect I wasn't really a fan of. The kill itself was boring, and Kevin Williamson himself even regrets killing the character off. Like him though, we all know the death was necessary. Knowing this, why not at least go above and beyond for a fan favorite? Let me stop. Sometimes I just get in too deep, because I care about his character, but luckily for me, the next character I don't really care for like that, because it's just Officer Andrews. Fun fact, he's actually the first law enforcement casualty in the franchise. Actually, that's kind of a dark fun fact. So maybe we can call it a darn fact. The next few kills are like actually back to back, so bear with me, as this is fixing to get wild. Officer Andrews and Richards are tasked with escorting Sydney and Hallie somewhere safe, and preferably Ghostface free after the announcement of Randy's death. While driving them to their safety, they stopped at a red light, which Ghostface used to his advantage, and while Officer Andrews and Officer Richards were teasing Sydney and Hallie, Ghostface smashed through the driver's seat window and slashed Officer Andrews' throat. Ghostface then hijacks the car. What does he do next? We'll get right back to that soon. Officer Andrews had a very jump scare type kill, but still, it sucked. If you've been on this journey with me for any length of time, then you know by now that I simply hate throat slashes because they've been done to death, with full pun intended. The only good part of his death scene is the sequence that follows, with Officer Richards. After the death of his partner, Officer Andrews, Officer Richards attempts to exit the car in hopes of popping one off at Ghostface, but Mickey kicks Bro in the jaw and starts busting him up on the window next to Sydney and Hallie. He then throws Richards across the hood and gets into the driver's seat. Richards gets up and aims, he fires a shot, fatally wounding Ghostface. The day is saved! Except it's not, and Ghostface drove into him. Richards hung onto the hood of the car, attempting to stop the killer. The car crashed into a construction site and his head was impaled with a metal pole. So obviously, so much better of a kill / sequence. Richards really fought to the end to help. Bro could have rolled off the hood to ensure he stays alive, but he was ready to risk it all. High risk, high reward. Unfortunately for him though, the risk was just a little too high. But when they do say he was one of Chief Hartley's best, I can believe it. And the crazy part of the sequence, it's still not over. Ghostface just crashed the car with 2 other passengers, Sydney and Hallie McDaniel. Roommate and best friend of Sydney, Hallie McDaniel woke up in the back seat along with Sydney. Luckily, they woke up before Mr. Ghostface though. They realize they have to crawl over the dude to escape. Again, luckily they do make it out of the car. They made it. Then Sydney decides she needs to go and see who the person behind the mask is. But this is where their luck runs out. Sydney arrives to see, boom, he's gone. But where could he have gone? Worried, Sydney turns to Hallie to inform her, and I'm sure you know where this is going. Ghostface is behind Hallie, grabbing her and stabbing her 4 times in the chest. He then just throws her down. It, for the most part, was your standard kill, but the shocking nature of it makes it better than others, and the fact that Sydney just lost someone very close to her. Another little cool tidbit you may or may not know though, Hallie and Derek were originally looking to be the 2 killers, but after the script got leaked, the story was rewritten in order to keep the element of surprise. Let me know down in the comments if you would have preferred Derek and Hallie, or Ms. Lumis and Mickey as the movie's killers. Speaking of, Derek Feldman. Derek throughout was teased as a red herring, with Sydney having trouble trusting him after her last boyfriend. During the movie, there was a play being worked on, and Derek met his end on one of those props. His frat tied him up to a big prop as part of revenge for giving Sid his Greek letters necklace. His end alone doesn't warrant a high tier because he was just shot in the chest. The heart if you want specifics, but the consequences of his death changes the game as well. Sid blamed herself for the death because she didn't allow herself to trust him until the very last moment. Mickey also used that to break Sydney. Derek's death affected Sydney pretty heavily, and if you think about it, he kind of sealed his fate giving up that necklace. Crazy. Crazy? I was crazy once. They locked me in a room. A rub Nancy Lumis. Honestly, I like Miss Lumis, but at the end of the day, she was a full copycat of her son Billy, which does fit into the theme of Scream 2, but at what point should it keep going? Her motive was the same, her death was the same, they were the same. It was a cool twist for it to be Billy's mom at the same time, but she was hardly in the movie, and that's another story for another topic. Not a terrible death, we've just seen it before, but something we haven't seen before was during the death of Mickey Altieri. So, for context, we have seen the Ghostface duo start falling apart as early as Scream 1, but this time we see an intentional betrayal. Nancy Lumis initiates Mickey's end actually. As he's talking about his motive and how he's excited about the trial, Nancy Loomis, pops him in the chest and he falls back. But he doesn't go down without a fight as he shoots a passing by Gale. After Nancy does her monologue, as killers do, she gets her comeuppance. As she's lying there down for the count, Mickey springs back up. Again, as killers do, but then he gets absolutely peppered with shots. While not crazy, it was a little more unique in the fact that bro was turned into Swiss cheese, which kind of had me putting him in the Carnage Candy category, but compared to some kills coming up, it doesn't really hold a candle to them, so for that reason, I'm out. That's every death in Scream 2. Part 3 will be released soon. Trust that. But in the meantime, why don't you check out this video, where I solved a cryptic movie teaser, or this video where I talk about the most anticipated horror movies for 2024. I appreciate you and your time, and as always, stay chill, and I will see y'all next time.
Cause let's face it, baby, these days, you gotta have a sequel.